Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Um, Welcome to the closing keynote event for the Farm to Institution Summit. My name is Mary Nally. I am the director of the Center for Campus and Community Engagement here at Ohio University, and I will be serving as the moderator for this keynote closing session. Please note that this session is being recorded and transcribed. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. For this session, your camera and microphone have been turned off. The chat feature has been enabled and you are welcome to send hellos, comments, and questions via the chat. I will be monitoring this throughout the presentation and will ask any questions you have of our speaker as time permits. At this time, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Hylie Voss. Hylie is the president of the Sugarbush Foundation, is the daughter of the Sugarbush founders, Don and Mary Ann Flournoy. She and her family moved back to Ohio from Texas in 2017. She currently serves as the managing director for Sugarbush Valley Impact Investments, a company that invests in local agriculture and environmental related businesses. Hylie also manages her family's farm outside of Athens and 600 acres of pine timber in East Texas. While in Texas, Hylie pioneered the Discovery Learning Garden program at her children's school. When she taught 5th grade, Hylie trained and took students to work with the homeless and in nursing homes. In addition, she trained the children's workers in Albania, worked earthquake relief in Turkey, assisted refugees in Germany, Uganda, and Texas, and once swam a race from Asia to Europe. My goodness. It is my pleasure to now turn it over to Hylie Voss. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. You included even my long past history. As Mary said, I'm Hylie Voss, and I am the president of the board of the Sugarbush Foundation, which is a supporting organization of the Ohio University Foundation. We fund collaborations between the university and the community partners in the area of sustainability, both to improve the quality of life in Appalachian, Ohio, and the environment. We focus on areas of sustainability, and one of those areas is strengthening the local food systems. For example, the Sugarbush Foundation funded the high tunnel, which is seen here in this slide, at the Ohio Student Farm that we heard about from Dr. Art Tracy. And I can tell you that just listening to his presentation made me drool for his vegetables, because he grows the most luscious vegetables I've ever seen. His lettuce just like melts in your mouth. I remember last fall I was off campus and I encountered 3 Bangladeshi students who had just arrived. They had only been in the States a few days. They were really wandering far from campus and they were lost. And I picked them up and I just said, has anyone shown you around the campus? And they were like, no. So they didn't know their way around. So I said, well, I'll just give you a little orientation. Well, I drove them over to the Ohio Student Farm and we got out and we walked up to this border of bamboo, and there's this tunnel that goes down through the bamboo, and we came to this amazing round door. And they were like, whoa, where are we? And we opened the door and walked through into the central garden of the Ohio Student Farm. And they just said, oh, we could be in Bangladesh. So that brings me to my first point, which is that local foods help to build a sense of connection to place. I really enjoyed the talk that was given by the federal hawking folks. You know, the Sugarbush Foundation funded, it's been more than a decade ago, an effort to increase local foods that were being used at the federal hawking schools. that initiative did not go very far, but you know what, just because it doesn't work the first time or really catch a hold the first time does not mean that it is not worth doing. I am so grateful to hear that the federal hawking folks have continued to push forward and are still going at it. I can just remember former federal hawking superintendent George Wood was saying how in the morning he would go in the breakfast area with the students and he would take locally made breakfast cereal and locally produced milk and put that in, and he would model that in the morning. He'd go around and eat a bowl of breakfast cereal, just that alone modeling, because he wanted those kids at Federal Hawking to know that food can be from here. This picture here that we have is how local foods build a sense of connection to the land. You know, as Mary mentioned, before I moved back to Ohio in 2017, I started and ran the garden program at my kids' school in Texas. And this was suburban city kids. You know, basically their only connection to the dirt was that their parents told them, their mothers told them, don't get into it. And so they were really amazed when they learned that in this garden, you're allowed to dig up to your elbows to get the sweet potatoes out. We had so much fun in that garden. But the kids were learning something that is a connection, not just to the part of the connection to place was the connection actually to the dirt and what dirt actually is. They would take the plants that they had, old plants they'd pulled out of the garden, put them in wheelbarrows and haul them down to the compost area. Next slide, please. And on the left, you can see them taking the plants down to the compost area, and then they would take another bin that had the finished compost, load up the empty wheelbarrow, put the dirt in it, and bring it back to the garden and plant in it again. And the kids got the idea of this cycle. You know, this is not even talked about in the city. The kids would not have known it, and it even was so strong that the parents who were also from the city would come. I would see sometimes these very you know, good-looking, athletic young parents come by and want to see what their kids were doing in the garden, but they really didn't know anything about a garden. And they would look at those compost bins, one that had the plants, one that was halfway between plants and dirt, and one that was to dirt. And I would say, this is where we make our homemade dirt. And they would say, you could just see this look go over, it's like a progression of looks going over the faces of the parents. First look was this look of the light of comprehension coming on, that, they're looking at the plants, they're looking at the dirt, they're looking at the one that's halfway in between, and it's dawning on them that plants turn into dirt. Then the next look that crosses their face, of course, this all happens instantaneously, but the next look is astonishment that they didn't know that. And then the next look that comes after that is embarrassment that they didn't know that. So it's this local foods and having gardens in schools is not just important for the kids, it's important for the adults too. And to help us keep that connection with the dirt. Then also local foods help to build a sense of connection to community. You know, here locally we have two nonprofits, community food initiatives, who we've been hearing about here, and also Good Works, which have facilitated many community gardens in our area. And when I first moved back to Texas, we were living on, moved on to my parents' farm, and there's a trailer park that adjoins the field, my dad's hay field, and Good Works helped me to build a small garden right on the edge of the field adjoining the trailer park so that I could garden with some of my neighbors. You know, the gardening together gave us a place where we were equals. It reduced the differences in economic levels, the differences in educational levels, and just gave us a place to be friends. However, some cultural differences still came. For example, I showed up to the garden one day and my trailer park friend had picked like a whole bucket of green tomatoes. And I was like, what are you doing? You know, I knew she would sometimes set them in her window to let them. I was like, you should let them ripen on the vine. And I kind of jumped on her and she kind of, and then later, she didn't say anything, but later there were ripe tomatoes and she didn't want any. And I was like, you don't want these? No, she said, we like them for fried green tomatoes. That's all. That was a cultural problem for me, and I realized I need to not always think I'm right. Another way that local foods builds community is the perfect example, perfectly illustrated with the Athens Farmers Market, which we're very proud to say is having its 50th anniversary this year. Talk about a place to meet. My mother has been gone for 2 years, but before that, she adored to go to the farmer's market because she couldn't get down 2 stalls without somebody saying, hello, Marianne. That still rings in my ears, even though she's been gone 2 years. That farmer's market has been the foundation stone in our local food movement here. It has been a key partner as well in food access, partnering with the Community Food Initiative's donation station, where people who have bought produce can drop some of it off at the donation station. CFI goes around and buys produce, helping to strengthen that local food system. And they also are open for people who don't want to take their produce home and they have excess to donate it to them. And then they turn around and put it out to food banks. And it's just a wonderful piece of pride, I think, for our community is to have this. Also, Rural Action and Community Food Initiatives have been partnering with the farmers market to have the Ann Fugate Memorial Fund in honor of the memory of Ann Fugate. It's a scholarship program for beginning farmers that helps to pay their stall fees in the first year of selling at the farmers market. So this is part of the wonderful community aspect that we have here. Also, local foods are an opportunity for students to develop a connection to place. You know, students come to Ohio University from all over Ohio, from all over the United States, and even really from all over the world. And these local foods help them to develop a connection to the place that they are in. We have Ohio University students who are participating in every aspect of the Sugarbush Foundation's connections to the local foods movement and the farm to institution movement. We have students who have been crucial to the facilitation of the Farm to Ohio Working Group meetings. They have led the GAP certification process to help farmers to get certified to be able to sell to Ohio University. They have had student workers at the Ohio Student Farm. They volunteer and intern at Community Food Initiatives. And we have student directors even on our Sugarbush Foundation board. Every aspect of this is fabulous learning for the students and helping to ignite in them a passion for local sustainable food systems. There's another incredible way that Ohio University students have been interacting with our local farm to institution work, and that is by helping us to tell the story. Today, we are premiering a video produced by a team of 6 students in Dr. Lynn Harder's Qualcomm class at Ohio University. The footage for this video was filmed in partnership with the Storytelling Institute at Ohio University by a student, Danny Galick, and also a recent graduate, Brett Masick. These students have gone and filmed aspects of our work, that is how we're getting produce from local farms to Ohio University. But the impact on the students was amazing. They were so excited after they had gone to film. The morning that they went to film at the Ohio Student Farm ended up being the same day that they had scheduled to go out to the Chester Hill produce auction and film the auction. Well, they filmed in the garden them harvesting produce, and then that afternoon they recognized the same produce was for sale there at the auction. And so, and they saw that it was Ohio University who bid on those particular vegetables and purchased them. And so they said, can we please come and film where you take these? And it ended up that they took them to the Jefferson Market and placed them on the shelves, and then they took some to the culinary services for preparation. So the students, by telling the story, really traced the circle of the local food, how the actual circle of the local food. Let's watch the video. We're excited to premiere it to you today.
Yep. I got 4 here. I got 4.5 down, 5, 31, 5, 4.5 down, half, 5.5. Here, 5.5 down, 6. So
303 on all of them.
303 takes 4.
Yeah.
That's the Ohio buyer.
That eggplant, the peppers, the slicing tomatoes that were delivered just this morning were literally in the ground or on the plants earlier this week. Delivered to Chester Hill Produce Auction for yesterday's auction. They may have been produced, grown by local regional farmers, growers, or they may have actually been grown at the Ohio Student Farm. So to think about, they are that fresh, and they are now being delivered into our venues today, whether it was into Central Food Facility or directly into Jefferson Marketplace here for any produce that does not need to be processed. It is just amazing to think about how many people have come together to make that happen that quickly. It is literally fresh from the earth.
So the produce auction first opened in 2005, and then Rural Action purchased it in 2010. In 2004, we were looking at ways we could aggregate produce. So work with smaller producers to build the capacity to make a destination where people come, and also to serve bigger markets like OU and hospitals. The Food to Ohio Working Group, the funding through the Sugarbush Foundation, has helped us to supply good agricultural practices certification to farmers, and like the auction itself is certified. So it's helped us to implement food safety practices. Plus it's also helped us with our distribution.
GAP certification, good agricultural practices, is critically important to us here at Ohio University. We have a central food facility that is inspected at a much higher level than some food restaurant venues. And the reason for that is we are actually considered a manufacturing site. It is local. We have our local employees, we have our local product, we're baking, we're cutting meats, we have traceability. Where is it grown? What are the conditions? About how it's transported? Where's the water supply? Where's the runoff? We can trace back to where it originated. That GAP certification helps us teach the growers how to maintain accurate records, what we need. It's a communication tool that we're using, not just the grower to Ohio University, but Ohio University out to the customer. Tiffany Harvey is one of our GAs. So her primary focus has been to work with not only the student farm, but other growers to become GAP certified. It is truly a labor of love. There are barriers to their success. Some of our local growers don't have access to internet. So it's an opportunity for her to individually work with growers to become certified and to maintain that certification.
The main goal that I have is to get more produce from local farmers to be procured by OU Culinary Services. My role here at the farm is to make sure that the farm maintains its GAP certification. So I am the person who's put up all of the food safety signs, and I maintain all of the records in case we need to do a trace back if there is some kind of foodborne illness that happens or a pathogen or something.
One of the ways that we know here at the auction if someone is GAP certified, a lot of our growers and producers will get stickers like this Y right here, and it says GAP certified. So that producer right there has GAP certified product, and our order buyers who do all of our purchasing have a list of all of the producers that we currently have certified here through the auction.
Also the education part of the work and making sure that students know how to use the local food in a whole produce form, so we share recipes and things. That encourages participation in the local food system and helping people understand the value of having a robust local food system, how it impacts our physical health and also environmental health, and how food connects everything and everyone. We were sharing recipes through cooking workshops that took place on campus. We hosted these workshops, brought recipes, brought students together. We all cooked and learned. We were able to have a conversation and talk about food. That was 2 years ago. Attendance at those was maxed out.
Through this foundation grant, we, Culinary Services, were able to hire 2 marketing students to design a logo for regional foods and then also for local. We use it on our social media sites. We use it on the shelving, tags for product. So if you think about a student experience, working with us, learning about what's grown locally, and then seeing it out on the Ohio University website or social media frequently, it has to be amazing. Beyond the GAs and beyond the students who have worked with us, the interns that have worked directly on this, it's the impact to the student. We have some signage that was created that talks about seasonality in this area. What they learn here, you know, just from being in the venues and this being a local item and grown 5 blocks from here, and we hope that it forever impacts how they eat and how they buy and how they connect with their communities. So it's Forever Ohio. So it's a pretty powerful message as to what we have done to make this happen. It would not be possible without the financial and moral support of the Sugarbush Foundation. So they've been highly involved in encouraging us. I think the thing that we have learned is how to come together. We've spent a lot of time meeting, but I think developing the relationships that support what each of our groups do to have an impact on the larger group.
Thank you to the students from Lynn Harder's class for making that video for us. I want to, in closing, talk about 3 ways to help the farm to institution movement succeed. This is what I have gleaned from watching the efforts here in our region. The first is you need to just chip away at infrastructural barriers. This is work that requires persistence, patience, and relationship. The Farm to Ohio Working Group, they meet together regularly. They've gotten to know one another, and they just say, how do we connect these pieces together? We've got the growing season is in the summer and the school year is not, and they don't match. How do we solve that? They talk about, we would like to buy, but we have to have a certain certification. Okay, how do we get the farmers to be certified? Pulling them together. They talk about, okay, we need 5,000 pounds and you can only provide 50 pounds of blueberries. How do we meet that together? Well, we'll let yours go first, and then the farmers can work on increasing their capacity. In this way, they just chip away at these infrastructural barriers, figuring out ways to make the connections. And this also requires intentionally putting together people who would not otherwise meet. Like take Gwen and Kent Scott from Culinary Services going out and actually meeting with the local growers and letting them talk to one another and learn from one another, which has been very exciting. The second one is creating models that others can imitate. The Sugarbush Foundation funded the Zero Waste Initiative, and the coordinator embedded at our local hospital, O'Blennis Hospital, for a year, helping them to develop a 5-year sustainability plan, which included a plan for using local foods. Well, they're about halfway into the implementation of this now, but you know how hard it's been for hospitals lately. And they had to reduce a lot of the activities, but they kept that connection going. They were able to put the keep produce being sold at the gift shop. They are hoping now to be able to get food back into cafeterias and work on other areas of connection, but they kept the connection going. But when they were doing the sustainability plan, they said, you know, we're the first hospital who's doing this sustainability plan, but others are watching. And now we've heard that the Ohio Health Network is wanting to hire at the corporate level at the a sustainability coordinator, and they were asking here locally for advice and for connections because they had done it here first, so made a model that others could imitate. And third, we have to build dense networks of interconnected relationships. You know, when COVID hit, it hit the university at a time when the university was already about to make some pretty severe budget cuts. And when it shut down campus, it was, I grew up here, I never have seen the university go to its knees like this. And this is a university town. It was hard. Ohio University cut the whole food studies program. We're like, hey. And the Ohio Student Farm struggled. When in Culinary Services, they closed all the dining halls when the campus closed. And they had all the farmers who had worked to increase their capacity so that they could be purchased by Ohio University and had become certified, they suddenly didn't have their market. But because of the relationships between Community Food Initiatives and Ohio University, Office of Sustainability, Center for Campus Community Engagement, and Rural Action Community Food Initiatives, they were able to pivot and still purchase the food from the farmers, and they were able to send it to food banks and buying clubs and other connections so that the farmers didn't lose the momentum that they had gained while they were building their capacity. This is, to me, what the definition is of a resilient system. If one side goes down, another side is there to pick it up. You know, when you go through a hard time, you know, we all have through these pandemic, the most instinctual survival reaction is to cut back and just maintain your core. But if you cut your connections, you are no longer going to have a resilient system. At the Sugarbush Foundation, we try to fund the ways to hang on to one another. We've learned that during challenging times, yes, we can cut back activities. We can reduce the activities, but we should still maintain our connections, because that is how we will have a connection to build on for later when we do have capacity, and that is the definition of resilience. So on that note, Mary Nally will tell us more about how we can continue our connections through this conference. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Hylie. That was such an inspiring presentation, even being a bit familiar with some of the content. I want to thank everyone for attending our second Farm to Institution Midwest Summit today and this week. The belief that institutions play a critical role in supporting and growing a thriving local food system, that institutions have the power to build resilience literally at root level, drives this work, and it's just inspiring to know that so many of you share these values with us. So this afternoon's final activities showcase the local resources that have made this work possible. So I know that the links will be put in the chat for both these in-person and virtual tour options. So first up is the Ohio University's Culinary Services team. Invites you to tour the university's central food facilities to learn all about what they've done and how they enable processing and serving of local food. That tour is today from 1:45 to 2:30. And again, there is an alternative video presentation that you can watch on our website. Second is Rural Action, that invites you to visit in person the Chester Produce Auction and tour a GAP certified farm today from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. If you are within the city of Athens, it is about a 30-minute drive, so please do take note of that. Alternatively, there is a video and a PowerPoint presentation that summarizes the highlights of what a tour will be. But it's gorgeous outside here in Athens, Ohio, so I hope that you do get to go in person. And finally, on the Summit's website, you'll also find 2 short videos that showcase the Athens Farmers Market, a key collaborative partner of community food initiatives and rural action, and a favorite place for all of us. This market helps us provide equitable access to healthy food and support future farmers in our region. So there are 2 videos on our site for that. Again, thank you all for attending. And if you would like to connect with any of the presenters or community partners or university partners that have been part of this week's presentations, please email us at farm2ohioinfo@ohio.edu. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.